before we even get to this specific beef, why do people hate the Tau? It's actually a relatively simple question, and it's actually got a relatively simple answer. There are basically two reasons why people hate the Tau. The first reason is because people have played against the Tau. The second reason is because people don't like the lore of the Tau. Now, the reason people don't like the lore of the Tau, and one of the problems I've had with them in the past, is it feels like they've just got plot armor beyond anything that is reasonable. They seem to be a faction that can rarely, until recently, could rarely take an L. Now, I would actually say that the Tau lore has been getting a lot better recently. I think the idea of the Farsight enclaves breaking away and there being essentially a cold civil war in the Tau Empire, I think that's kind of cool. I think the fact that the Tau are becoming more grimdark, and that the more the Tau get exposed to the galaxy, the more that they actually end up becoming more like the Imperium. It's actually kind of like you get to see how did the Imperium end up this way, where you can kind of see that process happening with the Tau. So I've gone from disliking Tau lore to actually liking the direction that GW is going in. You do have some knobheads that are like, oh, well, I don't like it. Why couldn't GW just had Tau as like the good guy faction in 40k? And if I was GW and I heard that, I would just give up. Because everyone complained that Tau were the good guy faction, so they make Tau more grimdark, and then you've got a bunch of fucking remedials online that are like, oh, now Tau are noble bright, I don't like them anymore. Just go. Just no. Okay. Tau lore is getting better. Alright? So they seem to be moving forward, which is cool. Yeah, there's still some problems. Yeah, there's still a bunch of blue commie bastards, all that kind of stuff, blah, 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 blah. But the point is that GW is actually evolving the Tau lore. Things are going in a certain direction, and I actually quite like the direction that they are going in. Now, the other reason why people hate Tau is the reason we're going to focus on today, because the lore reason is I'm not a lore guy, so I'd be talking outside of my lane. I think lore is important, but I tend to find that the homebrew lore and the homebrew canon that people come up with, especially that which is based off the games and the experiences that they have, tends to be more fun and interesting to me than the shit that gets cooked up in a codex. Whether that's just there to inspire you to come up with your own stuff, in my opinion. So let's talk about something that I do actually have a bit more experience with, which is playing the game. So the reason why people hate the Tau is because in the past, the Tau have been a very problematic faction to play against. And it's because they've always kind of felt like the faction that just blows you off the table with shooting. There's all sorts of different ways they've done this over the various editions in the many years. You've had Fish of Fury all the way back in like 3rd/4th edition. You've had Farsight Bomb in 5th edition. You've had Riptide Spam in 6th edition. You've had Riptide Spam in 7th edition. You have Riptide Spam in 8th edition. You have Riptide Spam in 9th edition.
You heard me. I said creep.
So the problem is that one of the big problems with playing against Tau is that they can feel they're just like a fun destroyer of an army. Traditionally, they've been a fun destroyer. Farsight Bomb comes down, blows your army off the table. You haven't got enough left to survive. You haven't got enough left to do anything. They win. It's one turn and done. It doesn't matter what you could have done in 5th edition. Farsight Bomb will drop down, blast your ass off, and that was it. You couldn't tie it up in combat because you could fall back and shoot and all this kind of stuff. And then you had, a more recent example, you had with like 9th edition, where Tau had what they called the step out, where basically Tau would wait until sort of turn 2, turn 3, and then they would just step out from behind all the L-shaped ruins, and they would blow 1,000 points of the enemy army off the board in one go. They were just utterly lethal. Utterly broken. They were a solid like 4-1 faction. But the problem is that the 4 games that they won, they destroyed the fun that their opponents had. And the one game that they lost, it's just because Tau are a one-dimensional army. which is a big problem in their design philosophy. There's no need for them to be a one-dimensional army. The whole point of the auxiliaries was to make them so they didn't have to be one-dimensional, that the GW could have all of these different races that could come in and could do aspects of the fighting that Tau didn't like, and that would make the Tau much more well-rounded, much more balanced army. But for some reason, GW just leaned into battlesuit spam and continued to lean into it. So the problem is that Tau would basically spend 4 games at an event, 4 out of 5 games at an event, just blowing people off the table in the most uninteractive, janky bullshit kind of way. And then they'd lose one game just because there was always going to be a bigger fish out there that could also do shooting, but then also do melee, because this is 40k. There's always someone that's going to be a bigger fish than you, essentially. Also, you know, you've got a bit of a problem with, like, Tau players having a bad reputation for cheating. It's not every Tau player, but it always seems to be a Tau player and all that kind of stuff. But that's just that's almost you get cheating everywhere. You know, you get cheating everywhere. It's just that Tau have a bad reputation for it. But the focus has basically been how the Tau have played. All right, and the Tau is they blast people off the board. All right, until 10th edition. Now, before 10th edition, Tau had one of the most toxic reputations in any tabletop war game that I've ever had the pleasure of playing. I played old school fantasy, and people hated Tau more than they hated High Elves with a goddamn World Dragon banner. And that was a pretty hated combo, you know. So Tau were hated more than that. Tau were hated more than bloody Bamboo Spear Fighter spam in Bolt Action. Just Tau were hated more than bloody, I think it was Death Guard and Imperial. Tau were hated more than Imperial Fist and Heresy, which are widely considered to be an almost auto win army. Do you know what I mean? So the problem is that Tau had a really, 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 really bad reputation. It seemed that people just dreaded fighting into them. And everyone had a horror story about playing into them. Until 10th edition. In my opinion, there's only one man keeping the streets safe. 10th edition finally fixed the Tau. It was this close. And if GW had stuck with it, they would have, in the space of, after 9, no, not quite, because they weren't around in first edition. After 3, from 3rd to 10th, 3rd to 9th, so after 6 or 7 editions of them being hated, in one edition, GW turned the franchise around. Now, how did they do it? Well, for the first time, Games Workshop didn't encourage battlesuit spam. Battlesuits was certainly a tool in the toolbox, but they weren't the only way of winning games. So they released this and the unique starter box for the Tau was remastered Croup models. And then Kill Team came out and we got remastered Vespid. And it really felt like GW was finally getting it. They're gonna explore the auxiliaries of the Tau. And I actually got quite interested in the faction. I ended up using them a couple of times. And I found that running my Tau as like a Xenos Guard army, where I would have Hammerheads instead of Lehman Russes. I would have Riptides instead of Rogel Dawns. I would have Fire Warriors instead of Guardsmen. I would have Pathfinders instead of like Catachans. I would have Stealth Teams instead of like Ratlings. I would have Battlesuits instead of Scions. And applying this sort of guardification to the Tau, not only did I find that they were incredibly fun to play, but I also found that it actually worked. And I took my Tau to a couple of tournaments over the course of 10th edition, and I think I went undefeated with them. I think I won one and I podiumed the other. So it took a while, but even some of the most dedicated Tau hating people like myself, although of course L10, he's still holding up that banner of Tau hatred, but even some of the most dedicated, traditionally most vocal voice in the community of the disdain of the Tau, including myself, even some of us kind of got turned towards, oh, these guys aren't so bad. You know? These guys aren't so bad. Like, it's just like playing a different skin of guard. You know, it's just like a different, that's it. It's just a reskinned guard, essentially. And you know, I remember, you know, Mad Larkin went heavy on them. And I remember we found that this whole like, this massive like suite of STLs that were all Guvesa themed, and it was all like chimeras that had like hover jets put on them and sentinels that were converted over to battle suits, and it was really, 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 really cool. And so after 2 years of this, there were more and more people that were getting interested in picking up Tau, and there were more and more people that were getting, and people were getting less hate for collecting Tau, and everything seemed to be going in the right direction. But the problem was the Tau players themselves. You see, despite the fact that to any outside observer from the faction, and many of the quiet majority within the faction itself, despite all these people, the outsiders and the quiet majority, seeing that Tau were finally becoming a more interesting, a more flavorful, and an actually more fun faction to play against and with, it was the competitive, vocal Tau players that wouldn't shut the fuck up. Every single meta Monday, it was, oh, Tau are so shit right now. Oh, I just can't, I can't just use, I just can't get, Tau are so shit right now. Oh, I just can't get Tau to work. Oh, they're so this, they're so that, blah, 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 blah. And it was all lies. And it was all bullshit. Do you want to know what the win rate of the Tau was when the community was complaining about how bad they were? 42%. For once or twice, it dipped to 42%. The rest of the time, it was about 45%, roughly. We'll say between 42 and 45. We'll cover all bases. There are factions out there that would literally kill to have a 42% win rate. The Guard, since the beginning of 10th edition, has basically been on a 42 to 45% win rate. None of us have complained. But for the Tau players, they just couldn't stop fucking complaining about their terrible win rate, about how unplayable they were. And the reality of the fact is that they weren't a bad faction. The reality of the fact was that the Tau community was having an identity crisis. That was it. Because these guys had been... the people that traditionally collect this faction had got so used, edition after edition, being able to spam battlesuits and spam riptides, that they got so used to basically being on a fucking power trip 4 out of 5 games that they kind of felt that they were one of the big boys. They felt like they were meant to be rubbing shoulders with the likes of the Eldar players, you know, and that they were the one, you know, that's the clubhouse that they thought they were in. And then they basically had to slum it down in the mid tables with the rest of the normal people, with the rest of the normal factions. And it was like, oh my God, I've only got a 42% win rate. Oh my God. And it's like, everyone's looking around at them. You know, all the people that are there are like, yeah, so what's the big deal? It was unbelievably tone deaf. oh, we've only got a 42% win rate. Oh, we only ever seem to be able to go 4-1. We can never win an event. Oh my God, you only go 4-1? Oh my God, woe is you. Why don't you go cry to that Imperial Agents player? Okay, that's not a great example. Why don't you go and cry to the Orc player who's had about 3 months cumulative of his faction not being shit to run? You know? This was the situation. And it was because the Tau players felt like they should be more powerful than they were. And they were like, and I had so many Tau players say to me, but we don't want to feel like Xenos Guard. We don't want to feel like Xenos Guard. And it's like, I know that's not what you want, but it's for the greater good. It's for the greater good of the 40k community. Your faction is toxic waste. Everyone fucking hates you. Like, every single time someone does a poll of what's your least favorite faction in 40k, Tau win. They beat the fucking Eldar, for fuck's sake. You were toxic waste. You needed to be redone. You needed to rebrand. Because it's literally, Tau players will force people out of the fucking hobby. If not on purpose. Tau the faction, not the players. Tau the faction will force people out of the fucking hobby because people have such horrendous games against them. They go, fuck this, I'm not playing again, because they're just the fun destroyers. Because they just blow you off the board in one turn with no interactivity, there's nothing you can do. And they always seem to have some janky fucking mechanic, like fucking a million drones that die before you have to kill before you get to the Riptide. Things like Fish of Fury, things like deep striking down and blasting people to death. It always seems like they've got power and bullshit. So it was for the greater good of 40k that Tau became not necessarily Xenos Guard, but became something different. Became a well-rounded faction. Not just one that blasts you off the board. Not just one that spams battlesuits, but one that you see taking a mixture of tanks, infantry, and various types of battlesuit and auxiliaries all working together. The equivalent of taking some Bulgrin. The equivalent of taking a couple of squads of Bulgrin, a couple of platoons of infantry, a couple of Leman Russes, a couple of Rogel Dawns, and a couple of taking like 2 Hammerheads and maybe 2 Riptides and maybe 2 squadrons of like battlesuits dropping down and maybe like 2 or 3 squads of Firewalls, a couple of squads of Scouting Crew, maybe a squad 2 of Vespid, maybe a squad 2 of the Crew Rampagers for a bit of combat punch. This is what your faction was becoming. This is what the faction was becoming. But the bitching, moaning, and whining didn't stop. They kept peddling these fucking lies. These lies of, our faction is so bad. Tau is one of the bottom factions right now. Where, we can barely win anything when you're going like, when you've got like a totally normal 42 to 45% win rate. And all of this bullshit that was being peddled online, all of these Reddit posts, these Metamundo posts, these videos, all of this shit kept going and going and going until GW made the fatal mistake. They gave in. They negotiated with the terrorists. And in one stroke of a pen, in one publishing of a balanced data slate, Tau, in 1 week, Tau have gone from a 42% win rate faction to a 56% win rate faction. With one of their detachments, and I am exaggerating slightly here, it is a limited sample size, but still, one of their factions going with one of their detachments going with an 83% win rate. Even if you take Cayune out the table, Montca has gone to a 56% win rate. And the thing is that Games Workshop basically have come in and they've gone to the Tau and they've gone, you can now do your whole like spotting thing super duper easy. Basically have army-wide +1 to hit all of the time. And I am streamlining things, but that is essentially the outcome. But it's not just army-wide +1 to hit. It's not just army-wide +1 to hit. You can now army-wide with your Tau. This is army-wide. This affects all units essentially. So this isn't like I'm looking at one specific data sheet. All of this stacks up, and then you get the data sheet abilities on top of this afterwards. Okay, you will have an army which has +1 to hit, with ignores cover, with assault, with lethal hits, with reroll 1s to hit, and reroll 1s to wound. And then you get each data sheet's ability on top of that as well. Army-wide. That's what's basically happened. That's what happens when you simply take your units in the Monk card attachment and you spot them with a unit of stealth suits. It's not the stealth suits that get the reroll 1s to hit, reroll 1s to wound. It's every unit that targets the unit. Every unit in your army that targets the enemy unit that you spotted. And do you want to know? Some of the first things that I saw when GW announced these changes? I saw a lot of Tau players going, oh, these are great. Finally, we're back to being an elite battle suit army again. They were given 2 years to have an opportunity to become something fun and interesting. And rather than embracing it, rather than seeing it was for the greater good, they just bitched and moaned and whined until they could go back to their old tricks and their old ways. And this is where we are. And so, and straight away after the changes, I had stories were trickling into me from reliable sources trickling into me. I played Tau and I just got fucking rocked. I don't want to put him on the spot here or put words in his mouth, but literally the weekend that the changes were announced, or around that time, Lucian09 joined one of our streams. We're very fortunate to have Lutz as part of this community. Lutz joined this and went, I've just played against Tau with my Necrons for the first time since the changes, and they've got me, and they shredded me so badly they've got me reconsidering my entire army. Like this, Lutz is a calm, chill dude, and he was like vexed. He was terribly vexed. That's one example. That's one example from someone who you know. I'm not saying my mate Dave, who could be anybody. That's one example. I've had many others that have come to me. I've had a dozen people reach out to me, talk to me about their experience at the tournaments and all that kind of stuff, their friendly games, and every single one of them said the same thing. Oh man, I played the updated Tau this weekend. They fucking shredded me. Played the updated Tau. They absolutely wrecked me. Didn't take long. It didn't take long. And so that's my beef with the Tau boys. That's the beef. But you know, do you want to know something? Do you want to know what the real beef is? Do you want to know what the real beef is? The beef is that people when they saw these changes, said, Tau won't be a problem. Tau won't be an issue. They're fine now. They're fine. Lies. Lies. Deceptions. Anybody with half a brain could have seen this was going to be a problem. And yet, there are all these people, all these voices online telling you they won't be a problem. They're all right now. Tau are fine. You had competitive people coming out and saying it. You had YouTubers, Redditors, forum posts, left, right, and center. They won't be a problem. And do you want to know? Do you want to know something? It was only the goddamn MG community. And I got a lot of pushback. I had a lot of people push back at me. Lots of comments on my channel. Mordian, you're chatting shit. You're chatting bollocks. Tau won't be a problem. I had a lot of people. Mordi Guerrero. I actually had a lot of pushback. And you know what? All I'm going to say is that from this day on, you put your faith in me. How many times do I need to predict this shit? How many times do I need to call this shit? I told you guys that I told you the GW cycle, and almost to the fucking day, the game started breaking. I told you that Tau were going to be a problem, and they were a fucking problem. I told you that Recon Guard was going to be better than everyone was giving it credit for. And you know what? It went and won a fucking GT recently. The guy was 10 points down the entire time. That's just a few examples off the top of my head. I'm sure other people could point to other times. So many times that my premonitions, my predictions have come true. So many times. And yet, people still doubt me. I'm telling you, boys, if I keep being right, my head's going to get so large I won't be able to fit it through a fucking door anymore. Send me to the black ships. Send me to the black ships. In all fairness, it wasn't just me. I can't take the credit this time. I said that Tau were going to be a problem looking at the changes straight away. But many, many people in this community also were like, this is cracked. I knew how bad it was going to be, though. The litmus test for me knowing how bad it was going to be is when Mad Larkin agreed with me. Because anybody who knows anything about the channel will know that Mad Larkin goes out of his way to disagree with me on everything just to piss me off. Okay? It's this whole like hate relationship that we have going on with each other. We're like an old married couple. But when Mad Larkin was like, this is cracked, I am out there finishing my Tau army, I'm printing more Tau off right now just so I can go to a tournament and fucking smash people with it. And when he was like, Mordian, it's worse than... When Mad Larkin said, it's worse than you think, Mordian, you're right, but it's worse than you think. That's when I knew this was going to be properly gigafucked. If it was so bad that it got me and Mad Larkin to agree on something, it was... That was it. And also... Truth be told, I did see quite a few people online saying that they thought Tau were going to be a problem, but they were getting shouted down. They were getting shouted down for it. Yeah. Yeah. The big question is, I do believe I am owed an apology. I believe I'm owed an apology from a specific person. Give me a second. Okay, this one. All right. The legend FF8TY. All right. I think you also left a comment here. You did? Okay. Yeah, if I'm wrong, I'll edit my comment to say that. I'll have it right at the top. Keep up the great work, Mordian. Love your videos. My friend, I believe I'm owed a "you were right," and I believe an edited comment is required. I will accept your apology preemptively, and I expect many hand shandies as compensation. There you go. There you go. I'm just saying. I believe so. The legend. I'm gonna say it's meant to be like 50. The legend 50. I believe I am owed an apology, sir. I believe I am. I look forward to seeing it. All right. All right. So there you go. That was the Tau beef. That was the Tau beef. There you go. It turns out I wasn't wrong. They were cracked. And it's only going to get fucking worse from here. Oh my god. All right. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian glory hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and patrons. You guys are amazing. Truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full time without the incredible and generous support of my members. So thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a heartfelt thank you to Alex Dengal, Bonbon Vert, Lord Pryor, Mark Panconi, RJ Scorpion, Swordfish Trombone, Try Again Bragg, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, and August Barney. Seriously guys, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support is incredible and it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much. That's all for now. Hope you've all enjoyed today's video, and of course, as always, see you guys next time.